Okay, so Melissa, Tammy had sent a message saying she will not be available tonight due to
Okay.
family issues. So it'll be you and I, and
All right.
then she asked if I could just chair JPNL. So I'll jump on that if you don't mind as well.
Sounds good to me.
So tonight for Public Works, we have one agenda item, and that is Public Works Organizational Analysis, Recommendations Review transfer station operations to ensure appropriate allocation of costs and to maximize efficiency. We have Director Bushwick on the Zoom here. So if you'd like to jump in a little bit and kind of give us a little background, but just reading through these documents, this looks like a really good plan.
All right, well, I'll do a very brief history overview. It seems like much longer than 11 or so months ago, but in January of this year, the then members of the Public Works Committee reviewed the timeline and some of the priority recommendations from the organizational study, and assigned priorities to a portion of those recommendations. One of them is the review transfer station recommendation that you have in front of you this evening. That was last discussed on July 6th, and that was discussed at committee. So I believe that was our same group that we're working with currently. And out of those discussions, we really reviewed the history, how the shared transfer station came about, how it operates, and some of the modifications that we've made to our daily operating agreements. But one of the recommendations specifically in the study was that staff and the village board review the actual operating agreement to ensure that it appropriately allocated costs. And at the July meeting of the committee, we did talk about that, and there was an indication from committee members that they preferred a review of the agreement within the context of allocation of costs based on usage of the transfer station. And really the most appropriate and documentable way to review that is to determine the percentage of the tonnage that is processed through the transfer station by each municipality. And you gave staff some indication that that was the direction you would like us to proceed and to pursue. So in your memo this evening, there is a proposed draft revised transfer station agreement that does in fact allocate costs based on that use percentage. Currently, I'm going to jump right to Exhibit A on that, because that lays out the last 5 years, almost 6 if you count 2021, of materials processed through the facility by Shorewood and by Whitefish Bay. And I had used, or the draft recommends a 5-year rolling average. I used 5 because it seemed like a good number, but it really is just a number that I picked. I think a 5-year does tend to flatten that curve a bit. Mm-hmm. If you go to 3-year, I think you'll see more variation in the percentages from year to year. And I think if it's a bit more consistent, that works better for everyone as it relates to budgeting and other just expectations. But certainly 5 is just a number, and this body, the full village board, the Whitefish Bay Public Works Committee, Whitefish Bay Village Board, could certainly feel that a different number would better work or better represent that, and that is perfectly fine. But for our purposes this evening, we used a 5-year rolling average, and that goes to, that works to about 45% of the materials are processed by Shorewood, contributed by Shorewood, and therefore 55% by Whitefish Bay. And that seems pretty, historically. I recall when I started in in this position, the previous director mentioned to me that on refuse in particular, the split was about 60-40. And that actually does play out when you look just at refuse. So I think there's good anecdotal evidence that says these numbers don't change significantly. But when we're talking refuse and yard waste, and that is what we're discussing because the transfer station handles both of those materials, we're looking at a 45-55 split. So the agreement, I used the most recent agreement as the basis, and then just made that change where we talk about how costs are allocated. There are a few additional items that I did include in the agreement that memorialize some of the items that the Whitefish Bay director and I have been talking about over maybe the last 18 months, just as they relate to more housekeeping items. Specifically in one of our more recent reviews with the DNR and our stormwater permit, they had some, we'll call them helpful suggestions about better housekeeping measures we could do in the compactor area. So we have implemented all of those recommendations. There is a cost to all of them. And at the time that we did that, we agreed with Whitefish Bay that cost would be shared 50-50 because that was the split that was memorialized in the previous transfer station agreement. So in addition to the things like insurance and electricity that were already included in the previous agreements, I did add any types of stormwater improvements or facilities that would need to be installed and or maintained, and the cost for such. Other than that, the agreement is essentially as it has been previously. The first agreement, if you will note, was approved in 1995. Subsequent agreements were approved, I believe, in 2005, and then 2017. I do not have a copy of the 2005 agreement. That was before my time.
The handshake deal.
Yeah, no, I'm sure. Well, I don't know. So, but it may exist. I have not yet been able to put my hands on a copy of it. I think the interesting thing to note is if you look at the very original 1995 agreement, the first year the agreement was in place, it agreed to a 50-50 cost share. After the complete first year of operations, it did include a provision very similar to what we're talking about now, where costs would be shared based on usage. At some point, we went away from that. The 2017 agreement does not include that provision. It is still a 50-50. Full disclosure, I drafted, if we're going to call it that, I copied and updated the 2017 agreement. I wasn't aware that provision had been in place from the time that I started. Everything had been split 50-50, and the previous director never indicated that it had been any different. So interesting to note that was always the intention.
Wow.
So that's where we're back to.
It's only taken what, 20 some odd years to finally get to that point.
Something, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And I should note that from an operational standpoint, it isn't what I would call a significant sum of money. I think, as I noted in the memo, that the larger cost differences come when we talk about updating and replacing capital items. Mm-hmm. Just like anything else, those tend to be the bigger ticket items. So I am going to work on putting together an estimated or a projected operations number when this comes to the full board. I do not have that ready at this time, but there is a capital example that was cited in the memo. I have reached out to my counterpart at Whitefish Bay. I've provided him with this memo and with the draft agreement. I have not yet been able to connect with him to get any feedback from him, but have noted to him that it was Rebecca's intention that this be scheduled for the full board on the 20th of December. And so if they have any comments, we would certainly like to have those in hand by the 20th, but obviously, as this is a two-party agreement, both parties have to agree, right? So, we've done the legwork and asked them to review and respond.
What's there? Okay, so maybe I have some questions, but Trustee Baldoff, do you have any questions for Leanne? Nothing that sticks
I
out.
don't know. I think this clearly a lot of work has gone into getting us to this point over the years, and I think that it seems like we're in good shape.
I guess my question for you, Leanne, is what if they turn this down, this proposal down?
Well, I think if there's a couple of options there, right? They may certainly counter with something different. Then we review and discuss and respond. I suppose another option would be we continue through the current agreement until its expiration. A third option, which I think is probably a drastic path to take, would be to terminate the agreement. That isn't something I would recommend at this point. That's always an option. But as I see it, my immediate response, those would be the three paths.
Okay. And let's say we, so the current agreement is up in 2025. Would there be any penalty for adjusting this current contract? Not penalty, but do you see any kind of anything that would come up with creating a new contract and, let's say for 2022 when our current contract is up in 2025?
So I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Maybe you could rephrase the significance of the dates. How?
I thought our 2017, our agreement ran both parties will terminate on December 31st, 2025. Okay. So that's the term of the agreement for 2017. I'm just wondering.
Correct.
If they say, we don't want to do this, the contract says 2025, we'd like to just stick to this contract. We really don't have too much wiggle room there, do we, to create a new contract and go in a different route?
No, like I said, I think that's where those three options come in. We let it ride. We ask them to propose something different, which they may or may not. Or, there are provisions for terminating the agreement. I'm not sure that this is, that's a very big step. It's not something I would recommend at this particular point, but like I said, always an option.
And then if they, so let's say they strike, let's say they leave the contract with us, can they create, obviously they can create a contract with like a Glendale or another municipality. Does that put us in a really kind of dangerous position of not having, them as a partner?
I think, dangerous is, is perceived by the user, maybe. It certainly will increase our costs. The cost that we currently share for operation of the transfer station would then be solely borne by Shorewood. So the electrical, the utility costs, any costs related to insurance or operation, staffing, Saturdays would be entirely Shorewood's cost. As of now, the actual material is paid for by the community that generates it. So I would not necessarily expect those costs to be impacted, but it would be the smaller operating costs.
Okay. Like I said, I think this agreement, the one that you've drawn up, looks really great, and this is a really good direction. I just I hope that it's not contentious with Whitefish Bay. I hope they can see with the Exhibit A that you've put out there that they are, contributing more refuse and garbage to or yard waste to, to our facilities. So I think it makes a lot of sense. The other one that I see in here is the cost of the 12,500. Is that new, or is that something that has been in past contracts?
That has not been addressed in previous agreements.
Okay.
That is something that during a review, I would call it a staff level review. That was a proposal that I made based on some, deeper discussions we had about really the responsibilities that Shorewood has for maintaining this on a daily basis. It does take a pretty good chunk of staff time to make sure that, that we're monitoring trucks, monitoring trailers. And I don't want to waste a lot of your time, but really a very condensed, attempt to explain is all of the material is offloaded into 53-foot semi trailers, like you see on the roadway. There are weight restrictions on those trailers, so the material that is put in those, the weight of that has to be monitored on a constant basis. And when a trailer is full, it has to be removed from the compactor, moved to the side, and a new trailer put on. Up to an hour a day, someone has to, and an hour spread over the course of an 8-hour day, make sure that we're not overloading the trailer, that the trailers are being appropriately hauled out, and watching that, and making sure that trailers get called in. And for example, if we're doing leaf collection this time of year and we don't have an empty leaf trailer, is full and it's off and it didn't get called in, or for whatever reason, basically leaf collection stops because we don't have anywhere to offload that material. Same thing with refuse collection. If the trailers get kind of boogered up and nobody's watching and monitoring this, we have refuse trucks that come in and a trailer is full and there's not an empty trailer. We have nowhere to put this. Refuse collection comes to a halt. So there is a lot of monitoring that goes on over the course of every single working day. And that $12,500 was an attempt to kind of do some math to show how much of Shorewood's time is invested in making sure this operation runs smoothly, to the benefit of both communities. So
that I mean, it makes a ton of sense. I think this agreement just is a very fair and equitable agreement, because I feel like just how it's spelled out here, Shorewood is putting a lot of work in. I mean, your department is putting a ton of work in. They're using a lot of our resources. And, I think this is just the cost of business, and I think it's a very fair agreement. So fingers crossed. I mean, in your past conversations with your counterpart at Whitefish Bay, do you feel like this is something that they're going to be open and receptive to, or do you have any feelings on that?
I really didn't get, an indication one way or the other, but we've had these conversations. I think he understands, and the Village of Whitefish Bay understands our position. I think it's a reasonable request.
Yeah.
And I certainly think, that the point of this exact same scenario being spelled out in the very original agreement, that's a tough point to argue.
I agree. Okay. Well, keep us up to date if you hear, any feedback from Whitefish Bay. Would love to hear that. And do you need us to move to support this to go on to full board?
It certainly couldn't hurt.
Okay. Well, let me see. I will All right, let's see. Do we have a recommended motion? Public Works.
I did not include a recommended motion.
So, okay, that's fine. We can, we'll just, organization. We, so I move to, move the Public Works organizational analysis recommendations to full board.
Second.
All in favor? Me and you. Yes,
Yep.
it passes. It will be on the full board.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for all this. All righty, so let me just scroll back all the way up here. So I'm not sure if you know, maybe if Rebecca, you're here. Do we need to, can we do JPL here, or do we need to jump out and jump back on?
No, we're going to do this on the same link, but we will need to technically wait until 7 o'clock because that's the time that the meeting was noticed for.
Okay.
So we can break and I'll see you back here.
Fantastic. Okay, we'll see you back. Do we need to adjourn this meeting?
That'd be great.
All right.
I will
move
move
to
to
adjourn.
adjourn. Oh,
I
second
second.
then.
Well, got it. All right, we'll see you guys at 7.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks. Okie dokie, we are back at 7 p.m. I'm not sure, it doesn't look like we stopped recording, so we got that covered. Maybe we'll just wait for Trustee Baldoff to get back on video and then we can start JPL.
Sounds good.
Did you get a chance to go out at all to downtown Shorewood this weekend?
I
Rebecca?
did. I
Yay.
was actually going to talk about it under my report.
Okay,
It was
I'll
a
wait
lot of
then.
fun.
I'll wait. You had fun?
Yeah, it was
Good.
great. Mhm.
I have not seen the tree personally yet. I've been in Green Bay, so I just got back yesterday and haven't been to that part of Shorewood. Does it look good?
It's beautiful. There's so many, I mean, I just don't know how they get all the lights on every single branch. That sounds so obvious when I say it, but I mean, it's a lot. You'll see it. I mean, when you drive by it or walk by it, you'll just see there's just a lot of lights on it. I was really impressed by it.
Cool. No, I can't wait to check it out. Okay, it looks like we have everybody so far. I'm not sure. I think, I got a message from Trustee Bachhorst saying she may be able to make it, but we'll start without her. So calling this meeting of the JPL committee to order at 7:01 p.m. And first on the agenda, we have consider conservation committee appointment. Rebecca, would you like to talk about this?
Sure. Well, there were a number of people. We have one vacancy right now on conservation. President McCaig assisted. One trustee Bachhorst was out of town to kind of fill in for the JPL role and coordinated with Josh Liberatory, who is the chair of conservation, to kind of review applications. And they brought one forth, which is the name identified in the memo in your packet this evening for your consideration.
Great, thank you so much. Anything to add to this? Doesn't look like we have President McCaig on the call, but I think looking over the application looks fantastic. And if it's being recommended, I think that I would be all in favor of this applicant. Trustee Baldoff, do you have any questions or thoughts?
I agree. I think, Natalia seems extremely qualified to serve in this capacity. And frankly, it seems like we're pretty lucky that she is, wanting to give of her time and expertise to be involved. So I'd be very happy to support this.
Yeah, I will. I would be as well. So I'll go ahead and just make a motion, and I move to approve Natalia Stein to the Conservation Committee.
And I'll second.
Fantastic. Welcome, Natalia.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Wonderful. Okay, the second item we have before you this evening is consideration of an Elder Services Advisory Board appointment. Again, in this situation, the committee chair and Senior Resource Coordinator Price had reviewed applications, and I came forth recommending, I believe it's Susan Kern.
Susan Kearns, yep. In the packet, it just says Conservation Committee would be the recommended motion, so that I think that might be wrong. It says I move to approve Susan Kearns to the Conservation Committee. I don't think.
Oh, that was a typo then.
Yep.
Sorry,
Yep.
my apologies.
So just kind of same as Natalia, just under review, she looks also very qualified, and I will, take the recommendations strongly. So Trustee Baldoff, anything here that sticks out to you?
No, I agree. I think that Ms. Curtin seems like a great person to fill this role. So I would like to also go along with the recommendation on this one.
Fantastic. So let's we'll make a motion, and I move to approve Susan Kearns to the Elder Services Advisory Board.
And I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The ayes have it.
Thank you.
Welcome, Mrs. Kearns. All right, so next on our agenda, I gotta scroll back up here real quick, sorry. Next on the agenda, we have consider 2022 Human Resources Manual. Tyler.
Hey, howdy.
How you doing?
A
Good, how are
great
you?
annual tradition of the village at the end of the year is
Yes,
updating the HR manual. I feel like, with the 6+ years I've been here, every year we've had a little less as far as updates. And this is probably the least amount of updates that we've had to the HR manual at the end of the year. Typically what I do is throughout the year, when a department head or employee mentions something to me, I always just make a footnote as far as something that may need to change. And so we all kind of do it at the end of the year rather than doing it throughout the year. And so what I'm just going to take is a few minutes just to go through those changes with you. Then at the end, if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. So the first bullet point, multiple changes or pages, we had a deputy chief, which, as you know, with the reorganization we did earlier this year, is now captain. So any language that referred to deputy chief, we changed to captain. And then we eliminated any reference to lieutenant, for that's not a position in our organization chart any further. We updated some language for replacement and safety classes. Director Butchlick presented this as an option, and I fully supported that. Just being a little bit more clear as far as how we go about replacement for safety glasses. The next is on page 34, funeral leave. We've had a lot of questions come up on funeral leave. But one was right now for funeral leave, if you are a direct family member, you get up to 3 days off paid through that funeral leave. And if you're a non-family member, you just get 1 day. Well, we had a lot of instances that came up that had us review the funeral leave, and I think that's something that we're going to continue to review. So sorry, I have a visitor.
don't be sorry.
So because of we had a situation where someone was a power of attorney for a non-family member, and with the responsibilities that come with the power of attorney, we just felt in that situation, someone should have more than 1 day to take care of those responsibilities. Because if they don't get that 1 day, then they are using vacation time. So
How many days is it right now? Just curious.
just one.
Just
So
one.
yeah, so by putting that into this category, they'd get up to 3 days. So I'm sorry, just can you give me one moment? I am
Yeah, no problem.
so sorry.
Nope, Tyler, no problem. Take all the time you need. You're on mute. Oh, sorry. Trustee Baldoff, have you read the Human Resources Manual yet?
I'm going to cop to the fact that I have not read the whole manual, but I've definitely given it a thorough skim.
Yep, I'm in the same boat. We should, make it our New Year's resolution to read through the Human Resources Manual, though.
We should.
We will. That's what we will.
Yes.
We will. 2022, after these changes are made, we're gonna read the whole manual.
That's right.
Okay, one of the beauties of virtual meetings.
Exactly, right.
Thank you so much. Okay,
And
so back
while
to
you were gone, Tyler, we both, Trustee Baldoff and myself, agreed that we're both in 2022, after these changes are made, we're gonna read through the whole entire resource manual. So
Oh, great. Yeah, it's 100 pages, so have fun.
I know, I'm excited.
All right, so back to the notes. So the next one is on workers' comp. We just clarified some things with our policy. If an employee has a work comp injury, typically for the first 3 days that they're off directly from the injury, we have them use their accrued leaves. Typically, this is for 2 reasons. One, we don't know yet if it's a work comp claim that would be approved or not. And the second reason is because it adds a little incentive for them to see the doctor right away. And then, they could potentially return to work within those 3 days. From a liability insurance perspective, within those 3 days, if we can have someone return to work, it's a huge help to our mod factor, which controls what we end up paying for liability insurance. So there's a huge, I would argue, both a financial benefit as well as an employee benefit to get them back to work within those first few days. So the part we're clarifying is if they're still hurt past the 7 days, those first 3 days that they would typically use their accruals, those accruals have to be given back to them. And then our workers' comp client, or which would be United Heartland, would then reimburse us for up to 66% of that time. And then as a village, we always have a policy that we still make them whole, just acknowledging it's a work injury so they don't get any lost wages. So the part that I'm just clarifying for that is within those first 3 days, that they would be paid back their accrual or given back the accruals that they use, whether they use sick or comp, vacation, whatever it may be, if the injury goes past 7 days. So that's just a clarification that I had to make. Next is library had some requested amendments to the adverse weather emergency closing leave policy. Library is just a little bit different than rest of village employees, and there's just some things with their policy that they just wanted to clarify in the HR manual. I don't think there was nothing really as substantial there. And then on page 92, we had to clarify how to implement recognition pay when a union officer is promoted into a non-union position. So the example for this, typically for our recognition longevity program, every 5 years, and an employee then is eligible for a 4% bump as long as they met expectation every year. The situation we're running into is if, let's say, a union positions are the only positions that aren't part of this program who are regular full-time employees. Mm-hmm. So if a union officer becomes a non-union, let's say sergeant, and is promoted to that, let's say they're in year 8. They served 8 years as a union officer and now they're promoted into sergeant. Well, how we had it written, technically they could serve 2 more years and then, be eligible for this bump. And we wanted to make sure that they had at least, 5 years before they would receive that bump. So we just clarified that if someone was promoted into a non-union position, that 5 years would start on the promotion date. So that was just a clarification that we wanted to make. The other reason why we want to do that is because if we didn't do that, these new, new individual, they would get their bump before some of the other sergeants and then would be making more than them, which for someone just starting out, that's something that we, it's not, from a pay equity perspective, would not be fair.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then last on pages 93, 95, we do this every year. And I just like to share every time why we do it. So when I first started with the village, we had pay ranges, but we weren't changing the pay ranges every year. So if you're an organization that just leaves the pay ranges and never changes them based on the market, what happens is very quickly your employees, because every year they are getting like a 1.5 or 2% COLA adjustment, they elevate outside of the pay range. So all we're doing every year is we're just doing a maintenance to the pay ranges where we increase the minimum and the maximum based on the COLA adjustments. And so an employee, it's not like they're getting an additional bump or anything like that besides the COLA they get. They just stay in their percentile. So a perfect example, if I may, is let's say an employee had a pay range of $20 per hour to $30 per hour. And let's say they were in the 50th percentile of that range, which would be $25 an hour. And let's say we received a 2% COLA adjustment. So what that would do is you would increase the minimum and the maximum based on that 2%. So that $20 all of a sudden becomes $20.40. The maximum becomes $30.60. And then the employee who's at $25 per hour, who's in that percentile, they get the 2%. So they go from 25 to $25.50. So that keeps them right in the 50th percentile. It doesn't move them at all through the range. And then what I like to remind the board during this time is what moves them through the range is that longevity pay. So every 5 years, they're getting that added 4%. So
And
for
is that the
employees-
number underneath the salary? So you're looking at, on page 93, you look at the salaries, the number directly under that salaries is that the hourly sort of?
Correct.
The hourly wage and then where that can fluctuate? Okay.
Yep. So for we have divided based on exempt and non-exempt. So for exempt employees, we reflect that as a wage. For non-exempt employees, we only show the hourly rate because with a lot of our non-exempt hourly employees, they're eligible for overtime. So that their earnings for the year could adjust based on if they're working overtime and to what degree. So yeah, so that's how we do that. And typically we set it up so an employee that we start near the minimum, it would take about 20-30 years for them in that position to start from the minimum and go to the max of the pay range. So I just like to serve that as a reminder that COLA is not set up to move someone through a pay range. It's a market adjustment, and it's solely used for that purpose. So so that's all we do that every year. We change the minimum maximum based on whatever the board approves in the budget for COLA.
Fantastic. Well, really appreciate all that work put into this. I mean, this is quite a document, and just kind of skimming through it, it really just opens my eyes to the need to actually read this whole document. So I feel very guilty. It's recording right now that it's on record that I'm going to read through this thing, and but appreciate all that kind of the hard work and diligence of keeping this thing going. It looks like a really robust document. So
I certainly appreciate that. And I must say, I've been a part of some other organizations that, they have some kind of HR manual or policy document. And, I've been in some organizations, they had different versions of it. And we were really fortunate here in Shorewood that we have a very, in my opinion, a comprehensive HR manual. So, I mean, when I came, we were in a really good spot. Certainly I've made some fine tuning to some of the policies in that, but I feel like we're at a really good spot with our HR manual, and yeah, that's definitely a blessing for the organization.
yeah, well, appreciate that. Thank you so much. Trustee Baldoff, any thoughts or questions for? Oh, okay. Well, I'll just make the motion to approve the 2022 Human Resources Manual.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
There you have it, Tyler. Thank you so
Great.
much. Really
Thank you.
appreciate that. Looks like maybe Rebecca's not here, so I will, it doesn't look like we have anything else on the docket, and we have about 12 minutes till our full board meeting, so we'll just, I'll move to adjourn until 7:30.
I will second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Well, okay. Thank you so much, guys. We'll see you. We'll see you. In a
See you
little bit.
back here in a little bit.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.